Today I want you to at least, speak in line with the co-aster theme, because we are talking about the eternity of all the universities that we are having, and I believe this has come also to your attention that the Helb announced that 75,000 students they may miss to get the funds from the Helb. How did you get to take that kind of news?
That news can only be termed as a tragedy, a very, very big tragedy, that the government or the Helb parastatal can even consider to deny Comrades their access to Helb. Helb it's oxygen in education. Therefore, alluding that 75,000 students...
Why is it oxygen?
It is oxygen because it enables education to go through, because you see, even in high school, we're normally told we'll have free high school, subsidized high school, but then you'll see high schoolers reporting to school, then 10 days later they've been sent home, yet you're being told it's free education. So when it comes to university, Helb is something that enables and makes sure that people from all backgrounds are able to attend university. So the moment that you say it's not there, it's like you're killing the academic vision, the academic dream of student.
Yeah, of course, but I want to take you a little bit behind before we get to move on. A few weeks ago here, I was having another topic concerning all these matters, and we were thinking options beyond Helb. And to you mentioned it to be kind of an oxygen, and oxygen is something that it's quite necessity. And the people engaged here, they told me it's high time we as the Comrades, we should begin seeing Helb as just a subsidy, and we should not just put all our minds concentrated with the Helb. And looking at this whole issue here, do you feel that right now Helb has inability to sustain the Comrades?
Yes, okay, some people can term Helb as a plan B, but my first question is, let's use the example of 75,000. Can we churn out 75,000 entrepreneurs and ensure that the 75,000 of them will be successful in their business endeavors to sustain them in the university sector? No. That is why I see Helb as oxygen, because there are people who require Helb to sustain themselves in academics. So the moment that we say we should start looking for other alternatives, no. Helb is there as our first alternative. The rest can be a subsidiary or something to add on top, but Helb is something that should not be touched.
Good. And talking about Helb in itself, and let's look at how the Helb board is responding to some of your allegations, you as Comrades. And you're saying that to some extent, they feel their hands are tied in terms of financial constraints. Is it something that you guys think makes some bit of sense?
It doesn't make sense. It is, what can I term it? I think those are just rumors. There is no way that a whole government can claim to not have a budget for students. Because why should we be having a budget to pay salaries of members of parliament and fail to have a budget to pay for the academics of students? That is a crime.
That reason cannot...
That is not a reason.
At all.
We cannot be having the government failing parastatals such as Kenya Airways, and then they still come to claim that they do not have funding for Helb. We cannot have a government paying for per diems for members of parliament and other politicians going outside the country and claim that they do not have funds for students. So that does not make sense at all.
Right. And another reason that they were giving that yes, this money is given out as loan and it's supposed to rotate. Like for instance, if you finish your schooling, then you can pay it back so as somebody else can get it. And according to the numbers, they're saying that a huge chunk still lies with the people. They've not brought back their money. And they're saying that this may haunt those who are currently proceeding with their studies. Do you think also that one is reason enough?
Two things. First of all is the current state of our country. If they could also ensure that once I've graduated, you're able to get employment immediately, then we'd also be able to ensure that they get their repayments immediately. Furthermore, Helb themselves delay in giving out the disbursement. So why should we be prompt in paying back? Secondly, or the third matter, I don't even understand why this thing is a loan. Helb ought to be a grant, the same way members of parliament are given grants to buy cars, politicians are given grants to buy houses, students ought to be given a grant to study at the university.
Right. And this whole noise that you're making, and the much talk that you guys are having, I don't know, just recently you were saying if this persists, then you could be forced to picket or protest about it in the streets, and together with Mheshimiwa Babu Owino also mentioned that. Do you feel like you are fighting a fight here that you will not be winning because this is not the first time that you're having this kind of a conversation?
It's not a fight that we will not be winning. You know, in the previous years, students have been very instrumental in the enforcement of any government, in the success of any government, from the 1992 struggle for independence, for the new constitution, multi-party democracy. And at the moment, we are approaching an electioneering year. And when it comes to elections, they need we as the students. Therefore, this is a battle that can be won at best during this period. And that is why we want to make sure that by the time we're transitioning to the next government, these small hitches are completely flattened, and going forward, things will be more smooth.
Right. Are you optimistic that they may be that smooth the way you're putting it? And to me, and how things are going here, maybe we may have even a worse situation.
The egg must crack. The rights of the comrades must be...
Who is going to crack the egg?
We, as the students. We are the comrades are the third arm of government, and therefore what we want is what we'll get.
Right.
Yes. The same way that we have allocations for the judicial arm of the government, legislature, executive, the fourth arm is comrades, and therefore the university students will also have the allocation.
Right. And from what you're telling me, you know, I think you've exhausted all your means to try and have this issue be sorted here. If it's writing to, I don't know, taking petitions to Parliament, you've done it before. If you're picketing, you've done it before. Do you have any sort of any means that you're gonna do it through this time around?
With the current student leadership that is there, we normally prefer discussing and having mature conversations with the various stakeholders and ensure that they get to understand our position.
Right.
However, if everything fails, it is our constitutional right to look for other means, which we shall use exhaustively. Yes.
Right. Of course, how I wish that those means you would have disclosed to us, but I know for reasons best known to yourself. But now coming back to this, and do you feel like you comrades are pushing the government too far, and your demands are kind of unrealistic based on the times at which we are, the economy and how we are doing? It's an electioneering period. Do you think that you're taking this too far and you're pressuring the government and it has little about it?
As I said earlier, this is like oxygen to the comrades. We are not pressuring the government to do anything that is beyond their capacity. We are pressuring the government to do their role, what we elected them to do, what they ought to do, what the Constitution right to education stipulates regarding access to education. Therefore, there is no pushing of the government that we're doing. Despite the economy, education must go on. We cannot stop everything and drop everything and declare that 75,000 students who need help ought to not proceed because of the COVID situation. There's some things that can be paused in the government budget. There's some things that can be cut.
For instance?
I've spoken before, some of these unnecessary trips that they do, some of these things that they end up funding, there are some projects that honestly do not make sense. Comrades should be sorted first. From there, move forward and deal with other things.
Right. And this whole conversation and the debate around the Helb and the Jitters that it's causing, how do you feel it's over detrimental to the success and the education and the academics of the comrades?
You see, once we miss the Helb, comrades themselves won't even be able to join the university. We'll be having a very big backlog of students who've cleared high school successfully and failed to join the university. As early as even now as we speak, we have people who are not able to join the university prior due to financial constraints. I think we all know how bad, in fact, in matters COVID, the economy was shattered. You cannot convince me that the effects being felt by the common mananchi are the same effects being felt by the government, who have access to getting loans and grants from other states to fund the students. Therefore, they ought to help.
Right. And of course, according to the chair of the board, the Helb board, upon being asked about how the things are going now, and he says here, the Helb gets money from the treasury, and the treasury has not disbursed the monies. And the treasury is saying, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they were unable to meet their targets of revenue. Therefore, the little amount that they have and they have collected, they're trying to see where can they place it urgently, and they're setting some kind of priorities here. Do you feel like also issues about Comrades and getting funds for the Comrades is quite a priority and should be in the list?
How can they not prioritize the fourth arm of the government? It's wrong. We are a priority because we are the future of this country, and therefore they ought to invest in the future of this country. They need the academic manpower from us. In the coming years, we do not expect to see other people doing some of the work that we can be doing. Through funding education, that is the same way that we make sure that in the coming future, the engineers building roads, the lawyers, the teachers, all as manpower from this country. And that is why we've also been seeing a lot of graduates going to seek opportunities outside the country, because there they seem to be more valued than us right here. So we're losing very important intellectual manpower. Therefore, the best way to retain it is by making sure that the government as well is funding this sector.
And some of you have called and told of the government that, for instance, they're saying that the government is playing some bit of mischief here. I don't know to who. And they're also saying it's quite being dishonest on the way at which they are addressing this issue. And you're also saying that they do not take the issue about Comrades so seriously as such, the way they take other issues. Such allegations and such naming that you're naming the government, don't you think also to some extent, they feel does not have any basis of argument?
We are not hiding the truth. The truth is the government has failed to support students. Even in the universities, the university funding has greatly reduced. Not even just help, just funding the universities to make sure. Some of our universities are facing so many debts that are yet to be paid, so we cannot be going clearing off parastatals like Kenya Airways, which ought to be making money, and leaving the university sector.
Good. Very well. I want to take a short break here, Mr. Kevin. When we come back, we'll be looking at how do we find an amicable solution into this. Yes, we know where the problem is. Maybe we may have a few amounts of cash, and we need to find more. And going forward, what needs to be done? We need to bring this into wrap. And we also, we're told that the chair is supposed to be questioned and give more explanation concerning this. What do you look forward into his explanation, and whether you feel the previous explanations from me, do they make some bit of sense to you? Would they bring any sort of difference going forward, and many more? And you know, you may, to us, most of you are saying there is little talk from the Ministry of Education on ways at which your issues are supposed to be addressed. And are you satisfied with the way the Ministry of Education is silent about this whole matter here?
We are not satisfied. In fact, we are very disturbed, both spiritually, physically, and emotionally, because the Ministry of Education ought to preserve education and to ensure that education continues. So their silence over this matter is scary, because we are wondering what is their mandate if they fail to address some of this situation.
Right.
Yes.
And don't you think that maybe their silence means they know some bit of reality, that it may not work the way you want it to be?
That reality might be fictional, because there is money. And the rights of the Comrades is not something that can be swept under the carpet. Therefore, we can assume that maybe they are occupied with KCSE, but saying that there is another reality to it, not at all.
Not at all. Right. If you could be advised, and if you could want to hear from the ministry, what would you expect to hear from them?
We'd not even expect them to address Helb. We'd expect them to tell us when Helb is going to be a grant, and when Helb will be doubled, if not tripled. Because you see, in some of our institutions, for starters, fees has increased. Therefore, fees increasing has even brought issues with the current help disbursement that is not even sufficient. So now in the situation whereby fees has increased and you're also denying Comrades help, that is killing the academic vision, the academic dream. In fact, that is something that ought to be reported to the Human Rights Commission.
Right. And now that this all issue is happening in the country, and for you Comrades, like to me, it sounds that things are not well off and that things are not working out. My question will be, do you see in the near future that getting into a university may come to be something very hard and very, costly for some?
Unfortunately, that might be the route that some people want to take, to make university education a reserve for the few, for the wealthy, for those who are able to meet those expensive demands. And that is something that we cannot allow, we will not allow, we will never allow. University education is something that should be accessible to each and every single student who has graduated from high school. Right. Therefore, means of trying to make sure that their access to funds and paying those fees are not accessible, something that we shall not condone.
Right. Now that you're not condoning it, and I'd ask you earlier, are there any options that you guys are trying to put in place in terms of making this thing be sorted out once and for all?
Previously, we had submitted petitions to Parliament, which were received, that was as early as last year, which were received by our Member of Parliament for Embakasi East, Babu Owino, as well as the Mvita Member of Parliament, Mheshimiwa Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir, and they were able to help us in articulating and increasing our voice to making sure that the Comrades' rights are being preserved, which is something that we really appreciate them for. Right. And we also believe that going forward, they'll equally help in legislation and ensuring that the interests of the Comrades are secure, just as they've done before. So those are some of the avenues we are trying to seek, both through Parliament, through the Ministry of Education, of which we also took our petitions there, and we are waiting for action, and action must be brought.
And if at all the action won't come anytime soon, what next?
Next is next.
Right, and that threatening of us and saying that you guys will go on the streets together with Mheshimiwa Babu Owino, I don't know, you will try and bring things into a still until your issues have been addressed. Do you think it's also an option that you consider? previously, whenever there have been doubts or claims or rumors that Comrades are going to the streets, they normally heavy police enforcement and whatnot to try and quell it. So when we say we're going to the streets, maybe we're going for a rally, who knows? But when we're in the streets, we'll make sure that our voice is heard. And the voice being heard is that every single student, every single Kenyan has a right to education, and therefore their source to education, the funding, ought to not be scrapped. It ought to be increased. Comrades must enjoy. Right. Of course. Enjoyment of life in campus.
And education.
Trying to figure it out. And of course, as we wrap it up now here, in your capacity, you as the SG from the COASTA, I want to speak about COASTA in itself just a little bit here. Have you taken any efforts talking about this issue? Have you taken efforts also to talk to your fellow comrades concerning it, and how do you address it? Are you telling them to be patient enough and wait, or how do you do it?
There was already a planned action that had been communicated by Mheshimiwa Babu Owino, which was slated to happen, but Helb seemed to behave, which caused us to shelve some of the plans that we already had and give them a benefit of doubt. So that's the message, because as I told you earlier, our current form of leadership is about talking to each other, not fighting or going against each other. So it made us take a little bit of a break to observe and see how things will go, and we believe that they'll behave, and that they will behave.
Right, they will behave, indeed. Thank you so much. And as we wrap it up now here, I think you being the SG just from the recent elections that were held, right? Yeah,
for the COASTA.
Right. And how are things so far in COASTA? Are you getting along very well? Do you think you're going to bring some bit of changes?
Yes. COASTA is a visionary body. We've brought along student leaders from all capacities. Our chairman, Kasim Bakari, leading us very, very well. We have our vice chair from JQuat, Jamila, as well as the rest of the body, who are all capable leaders in their capacities. And therefore, we believe that we'll be able to drive our vision moving forward in unity and ensure that even in cost, the universities and colleges are respected.
Good. And I want to ask you this because we also got some phone calls from Pwani University about the issue of security of Comrades, and there was that incident of, I don't know, a lady was found dead at the shores of the beach, and they wanted the press to go there and cover that story, and they say that things are not good so far in terms of the security of the Comrades. Has that gotten into attention, you as COASTA, and how do you think you're going to address that as well?
We're seeking to forming MOUs and partnerships with the various student leaders and organizations. Aspects like street lighting, that's something that every university ought to be given maximum security. We ought to even as well have patrols along the various universities, because we can have some students having late evening classes and having to walk to their various residences. So we're seeking to get into MOUs with the various, with the county governments, with the area members of parliament, MCAs, to making sure that some of these things like street lighting, security patrols are enshrined and enacted so that we reduce some of these conflicts that tend to arise.
Right. Good. And the fact that in campuses also there is numbers of students, and that equates to votes, and we're now into electioneering period. How do you get to bargain for your issues to be addressed and politicians coming in? How do you do that?
As I had mentioned before, we've had politicians who've been able to help in articulating our issues thus far in terms of legislation. Honorable Babu Owino is known for that. Honorable Abdul Samad Sharif Nasir in Mombasa has done the same. Therefore, one thing that we know is that even as they seek maybe to retain or to move to a higher capacity, we will, the Swahili say mkono hurudishwa. Therefore, we'll make sure that that capacity that they've done, the help that they've given us, will also be able to give back. And as well as right now, the people who are going to get in, we'll make sure that the people who have the interests of the Comrades at heart, we get into MOUs with them, partnerships with them, to make sure that even as they go in, they'll be able to fight for our rights.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. We want to get into another conversation of the day about matters of the CBC. I don't know if you have any comment about CBC. Do you think it's a reality or it's a fallacy?
CBC, I'm yet to even comprehend it. I see people drawing and creating art.
Is it the right route to which we are taking as a country and the future of our kids?
Change is not usually easily acceptable. Therefore, maybe with CBC, we can just give it time and have experts review it, see it through. We see the way forward.
Good. Of course. Like you see, I've got an expert across there.
Yes,
He's coming on board. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Kevin Mutini here, the SG at the University of Nairobi, Mombasa campus, and of course the current SG at COASTA, speaking about matters to do with the Helb. And yes, this is a conversation that will still continue. We'll wait and see how things are going to pan out in relation to that, and we will be giving you also all these issues and details as they come through, but we will wait also and see how things are going to happen. Till again, next time I want to release my first guest here, as we also look forward to have our second guest in matters about the CBC transition post-election. That is what we are discussing here. And there has been claims to have it scrapped up. Particularly politicians are now saying that if they get to be elected, if things are going the way they're going in relation to some of the comments that are coming out of the CBC, then they will be left with no choice but to scrap it off. Is it high time that we should as well think that as an option? That is what we're finding out from my guest, second guest rather, Mr. Elisha Mwango, who is around in studio. And I now take another short break here and meet me with Mr. Elisha later on.